Sounds good.
All right, my name is Jackie Porter, and I'm joined with Hillary Benson here to talk a little bit about the progress of our product career development framework working group. So last year, we established a working group to reframe how we're thinking about product career development. We heard some feedback from the Culture Amp survey that people didn't feel like there was great transparency in their progression here, and they felt that the current CDF was subjective in how they were being evaluated for the different roles in the ladder as a product manager. So we established this working group, and the ultimate goal was to deliver a revised CDF plan with different tracks that were focused on delivering results as a product management professional here at GitLab. So instead of it being focused on skill development, we wanted it to be focused on the results that each PM was driving with specific tracks in mind. Some series of activities that happened were interviews outside of GitLab with product-led organizations. We also did a survey internally about what people thought product managers should be doing. And then we met as a product leadership team and decided on the different skill sets that we felt were critical to begin evaluating product management progression here at GitLab. After that, we've delivered, I think, 3 different iterations of the CDF. And then we ran a pilot for a full quarter where people were able to conduct 2 CDF reviews with that pilot. After that, we incorporated that initial pilot feedback into our now current CDF revised template, which lives on this career development framework pilot page. So this page is been updated throughout the different phases of the CDF iterations that we've made. And it's really been what we would call the single source of truth of the new CDF. So going forward, once we revamp this working group, we will be using this page in addition to the existing CDF page to help support people's transition over to the new CDF. And then we would promote this page to the formal CDF review once we formally roll out the new template to everyone. We still need to figure out exactly how the rollout mechanics will look. And that's what our first meeting, I think, with the working group team will be. What do we think the rollout plan should be? How many people should be in the pilot? Should it be opt-in initially for the first quarter? What groups should be excluded? Yeah, we can review all those different iterations.
Okay, so it sounds like the updates or the changes that we want to make to it are fairly well baked, and it's now just testing it basically and then iterating if we need to, right?
Exactly. That's exactly
okay,
it.
Great. And then for the original, when folks were expressing that they felt that the CDF was subjective, were there specific items where folks felt like that was the case, or was it just a sense of I don't understand how my performance translates into the CDF and like what ends up being how I'm evaluated?
That's a really great question. So the way that the current CDF is aligned to different functions of our jobs, so like the validation skills versus build track skills versus communication skills, the PMs felt that they weren't delivering against each of those tracks. So they had to do like mental gymnastics on how their job relates back to these ways that these skills were being evaluated. And then the interpretation of those skill completion was not transparent. So even though we have a description of what validation track means, what does it mean to be exceeding or performing in those is not very clearly stated, because we don't have an objective measure of what it means for somebody who's conducting exceeding quality customer interviewing skills, for example.
Right. Okay, great. That's helpful.
And so the current CDF pilot page has the 4 tracks that we've converted over to, has the recommended KPIs that we're suggesting. So I think our first couple of steps will be to regroup with the original pilot team members, just confirming that their pilot feedback has been incorporated, that this is the state that we want to do the next phases of rollout in. So I think a good action item for anybody who's joining this is to review this CDF page in the templates and provide any feedback on what we should iterate before we start to do the next phases of rollout.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just internally processing. I've got a number of questions now. I'm pretty sure it's written down on the page somewhere. I haven't read it yet, so yeah, I'll have to take a look.
And you're welcome to throw those questions out here now, and then we can go from there if you're interested. We have some time.
I think it's mostly just like what exactly all has changed.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know that you, I don't know if you want to summarize. If it's easy to summarize it, sure.
Yeah.
But I may need to just read the material.
I can summarize that a little bit. So we have tracked a lot of this work in issues. So if we were to go back here to like the third CDF proposal, for example, I have a little note here of like we removed some tracks and updated tracks. The biggest net of it is we have 4 tracks in the current world. We have 4 tracks in the new world. But what we're evaluating are combinations of skills based off of measurable outputs. So instead of validation track, we have added like different ways of measuring that somebody is producing high quality validation track outputs. That would be measured inside of the product roadmap and product-led growth category, for example. Like if you're conducting good customer interviews, you're going to see the growth in your MAU, you're going to see adoption of your product, you're going to see engagement from the field. Thought leadership is another one that's replacing like communication skills and business skills. So there isn't like a one-to-one mapping. We've completely started fresh with new results focused tracks and kind of combined what we were measuring in skills into each of these different tracks.
Okay. And it sounds like some of the things you were just highlighting sound kind of like outcome based. Was there an attempt to make it outcome versus output based?
Yes. So
Awesome.
Originally we had the first iteration of this was still very focused on granular things that we thought the PM that we should be looking at for the PM outputs. This is now much more about the business impact or metrics that we're expecting to render in each category.
Great. Cool. What else should I know?
So I think our biggest challenge for this project is managing the team's just concerns about losing work that they've contributed to the existing CDF mechanism. Yeah. So we need to figure out how do we provide high quality coaching to managers to have these conversations, because change is going to be really hard. And if it hits people's like perception of their growth or their ability to obtain more money, we got to make people feel prepared to have those conversations, because I can see that that's probably going to be a big defensive part. So that will be a really good help.
I mean, hopefully it's the case that this is capturing kind of the key activities that the PMs are already doing. And so it's not as though, hopefully it doesn't feel like the goalposts are changing, but rather the way that we're rating things aligns better with what people are actually doing on a day-to-day basis. So
I completely agree. I think that the intent is definitely to help people see how they're how they're driving value for the business, and how that's how we want to measure them by, not how many direction page updates they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's the important change here, is that like, we want you to be focusing as a product team. We want you to be focusing on the things that are going to drive the most value for our business.
Yeah. And what moves the needle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if we have these processes in place, like opportunity canvases, like weekly triage reports that are taking up a significant amount of your time, but they're not moving the needle for our business, then we should feel empowered to challenge those processes. But there isn't a mechanism to do that today, because the things that we're measuring PMs by are defined by the processes we have in place. So it makes it very hard to have this continuous improvement mindset when we're evaluating people on the ability to adhere to a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's the principle of that is a great change, I think. So.
Okay, awesome. Any other thoughts or questions?
I don't think so. I'm sure as I'm reading through stuff, I'll have additional things that I'm wondering about, and I'll shoot you those, but Perfect. Appreciate you taking the time to summarize it for me.
Yeah. Helpful. Sounds good. Well, we'll talk soon. I'll go ahead and add you to the channels and to the groups for issues and review and all that stuff. Okay.
Okay, cool. And actually, if you got 5 minutes, if you want to stop the recording, I got to completely